that around, and I'd like to genuinely ask you, what do men want?
Nobody deals with any of the really valid issues. And then you get a bunch of anger, and you get a bunch...
She said, oh, I'm going to go do a sweat lodge this evening. And I begged her to take me along, and that was about 6 years ago.
Welcome to Speaking of Men. I'm your host, Mike Rivas, and this is public access television for Albuquerque, New Mexico. Today we'll be talking about men and anger with our guests David Kuenzli and Linda Smarella. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Rivas. This is Speaking of Men. And today we're speaking with David Kuenzli and Linda Smarella on men and anger and what men and women are angry about with one another. In the recent motion picture hit movie Thelma and Louise, there developed a tremendous amount of controversy on men's and women's relationships here in the United States. And what we'll be addressing today is a little bit of an attempt to clarify some of those issues and some of the directions we might take in creating a little bit more healthy dialogue, if that's the way to say it. Welcome, you guys. Good to see you here. Dave Kuenzli is a master social worker. He's done individual and group psychotherapy here in Albuquerque for a number of years. He's been instrumental in developing leadership in the New Mexico men's wellness movement. He's facilitated more than 35 men's therapy groups and life support programs. He recently led a series of workshops on empowering men in intimate relationships. So Dave is definitely interested in men's issues and men's feelings. Linda is an MA is what?
Master's actually in counseling.
Master's in counseling, and she does private practice work here, specializing in individual and relationship counseling. She leads seminars in self-esteem and stress management, and if you're in the 90s, you're under stress. And she's the founder and facilitator of Women Being, which is 6-week-long seminars teaching women how to self-lead their own growing support groups. And we'll have numbers at the end of the program that you guys can call either of these folks at and get more information. You guys have been doing some workshops together, haven't you, that kind of look at men's and women's relationships and making things a little more clear. So we talked about Thelma and Louise quite a bit on the program. The last one Mike and I did was we had no guest, so the producer Mike Kruchowski and I came out and we talked about Thelma and Louise for about 30 minutes. And let's take a look here real quickly at yeah, okay. Dave, why don't you start out and tell us about what men are angry about, just as a way of opening it up.
Okay, Mike. I'd like to say that I saw Thelma and Louise, and it was one of the things that really piqued my interest in terms of trying to understand what was the underlying anger, especially in terms of people's reactions to the movie, men's reactions to the movie. And as I began to think about it, one of the issues that I see a lot with the men that I work with in counseling is that they're really angry at their mothers. And although I'm not a person who is always blaming mothers for everything that's wrong, I think in our particular society, because in many ways women are abused and feel an underlying rage, I think, toward men and toward the way things are in this society. When they're raising their young sons, it seems to me that oftentimes, especially if they have been significantly abused, that they're going to have difficulty helping their sons grow up feeling good about women if they're angry themselves at men. And I think that's a major problem that we need to look at.
So there's a cycle there.
There is a cycle, exactly. For example, oftentimes what happens is mothers are raising kids with fathers either emotionally absent or physically absent, and so they're under a lot of stress, and there aren't men around to help them develop positive role models. And so here are mothers who are angry, who are needing to help their boys feel good about themselves, but oftentimes they're not getting their emotional needs met, and so they're oftentimes looking to their young sons to fill in some of the emotional gaps left because either fathers aren't there or fathers aren't emotionally available.
This is the little man
The
of
sons,
the house.
the little man of the house.
That basically gives up his childhood to carry adult emotions,
Right.
responsibilities for women in this case.
Exactly, and I think one of the things that happens for young boys is they're so dependent on their mothers emotionally, and yet they're also very aware that they need to separate. They look around and see men who are available, who are somewhat distant and often angry at women, and so they pick up a lot of negative models of how to relate to women. So as these boys begin to separate from their mothers who are emotionally dominating them, once the boys begin to get physically stronger, I think oftentimes they begin to take out their sense of anger and powerlessness with their mothers at women, either their mothers or as they begin to get involved with girls and young women.
Well, Bly's whole point is that young men need a male there to make a clean break with the mother for the boy. And to, in fact, he says a lot of the gang activity and things that adolescents do is attempts of young men at self-initiation, of trying to get that, and the fact that a lot of times the boy has carried things emotionally and spiritually that there should have been a male there carrying all along. So.
I see a lot of adult men who, when they get into counseling, they begin to realize how much they either felt smothered or manipulated by their mothers. And so they're very guarded in relationships. They're afraid of making commitments. Now that they're grown, they're more likely to begin to try to dominate women as a way of getting back at the resentments that they have, or express the resentments they have toward their mothers.
So this is the classic flying boy.
Yeah.
This is the puer aeternus that is up there flying around in the sky and can't get his feet on the ground and be in real relationships. Linda, what do you think some of the issues that in relationships with men that women are angry about?
Okay. Well, I think that most of women's anger probably emanates from their distress at their fathers, just the same way as men's anger at women comes from their anger at their mothers. I think that most women probably have really felt as though their fathers treated them as though what they had to say and who they were really irrelevant. And I think that we often feel, particularly in this thing about what it is that we want to share. The feelings that we have, our opinions about something, are actually seen as just downright nonsensical.
Is this the old, now little lady, don't worry your pretty head about this kind of thing?
Yeah.
Don't you
Right.
have an opinion on it? You just, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
So it's a disempowerment and kind of a not hearing what the woman is saying and not giving her the same respect and credit you would.
Right. And so, of course, many mothers modeled that also. You know, the father often was the authoritarian and the one that spoke out, and so the mother just kind of backed off. Now, in the bedroom or something, she may have had a different role by manipulating sexually, as far as not cooperating perhaps with her husband or something. But I think that most of the anger comes from what we have seen modeled.
Are you saying that women sometimes withhold sex as punishment?
Yes, I think that is something that happens. Yeah. I would think that that's a real valid thing to say. I think that women are also angry at men because, and I'm not going to go into why, I think, because I think there are actually valid reasons on both sides for all of this dynamic. But I think that many women feel that men act superior to them. And this goes back to the same thing of, here, here, little woman, you know. And so they tend to invalidate what they say, invalidate who they are, act as though they're not as intelligent, etc. And so women get real angry at that. I mean, most anybody gets angry.
So what it basically is men don't take women seriously. And the reality is, though, now that in a lot of homes, women are bringing in as much of the money financially and lending as much. I mean, you're actually taking on a financial partner these days.
That's
and
right.
but still, you don't think men are taking women seriously?
Well, you know, I think it's. I'm generalizing. I think we're all generalizing
Yeah,
a lot
definitely.
because.
Right.
We are, I think, very fortunate in meeting a lot of people who are not carrying as much anger, at least in our peer groups and our professional associates and friends. And as we speak about men being angry at women or women being angry at men, not everybody, not all women are angry at men all the time. I mean, once in a while I get angry at men, but it's usually something that's going on that has impacted me personally, and I tend to just generalize and say, well, all men are whatever they tend to be.
Well, okay. We have a short tape that we actually let's get it down to this, guys. Parent Craft is a tremendous organization here in New Mexico. We have an ongoing Parent Craft and parenting tip that we show each program, and we'd like to take a look at that. We'll be right back.
When your child misbehaves, act immediately if possible. Draw your child close to you and remain calm. Keep it as short and private as possible. For example, show your disapproval by saying firmly, "It's not okay for you to leave your skateboard out at night."
Welcome back to Speaking of Men. I'm your host, Mike Rivas. Today we're discussing men's anger with David Kuenzli and Linda Smarella. So we've kind of talked about what makes men mad and what makes women mad about the opposite sexes. Dave, we were talking during the break, and you wanted to talk a little bit about
Powerlessness.
powerlessness.
Yeah, I think, and this, I know this is true for many men, and I'd like to hear Linda's views on it too. I think many guys feel, in general, a sense of powerlessness in their lives. They're a cog in a wheel at work. They feel like people aren't really listening to them either. They're not very important, and so they're pretty angry about that. And I think oftentimes that spills over in their families.
So this is the work object. Women are sexualized and objectified sexually, and men are objects for work.
Yeah, I think oftentimes we're supposed to be the breadwinners, but maybe we can't earn the kind of money that we'd like to. We feel like we don't have much say at work. Those kinds of feelings that sort of perpetuate an underlying anger that spills over at home. And if there's any place we can feel dominant, and oftentimes that's in the relationships with the women in our lives, that's where that would tend to come out.
And of course, this is the old women as property thing that has been perpetuated in American manhood since Puritan times, I guess Bradshaw talks about. We were talking with the folks at Rape Crisis Center the last couple of programs we did, and that was one of the main things is men. Well, so what we have basically is a disempowerment of both sexes,
Yes, exactly.
and the premium really then is on, this is generalization as you're saying, but on one hand you have someone who's only seen as a sexual object, and on the other hand you have someone who's only seen as an object of work and what they can create financially. And the humanity and the politics of the heart and the soul suffer in both of these cases. And then men and women take those frustrations out on each other, right? So it's the old divide and conquer. If men and women don't have a dialogue, we got trouble. Because men and women are what it's about. Did you want to say something?
I wanted to hear more from Linda about the powerlessness women feel.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting that as I learn more and more about these issues, a lot from the work that we've been doing together, that I feel like we have a lot of the same feelings. Men feel powerless and women feel powerless, and we may feel powerless from different roots, but that we also handle it somewhat differently, although there are always looping over into the same areas. I think there are some women who are just as angry at their men who are too passive, let's say. It's a very familiar one. Why don't you share your feelings? Why don't you tell me what's really going on? Why don't you stand up and be a man? And then there are the women who are angry at men who, because of their powerlessness feelings perhaps, are overcompensating and acting really aggressively and hostilely toward women. But we feel just as powerless in many ways too. And so I think the pendulum has been swinging, and women are doing a lot of things to really show that we're not powerless. And I think that's scary to some men. I don't know.
think it is.
Think that's,
Yeah, you were saying earlier, Mike, that that behind a lot of anger is usually fear.
Yes.
And my sense is that for men, part of our training is, or our lack of training has to do with our feelings, our emotions, and that's where women are best in many ways. They're articulate about their feelings just the way our mothers were articulate. And I think oftentimes when women are able to talk about how they're feeling in our relationship and the guys are feeling sort of inadequate and I don't have words to express how I'm feeling, we get real defensive and we get afraid. And I think oftentimes it comes out in anger and dominance. And I think a way out of that is for us as men to begin to come together and really learn to talk about our feelings so we don't feel at such a disadvantage with women.
And that's, of course, that's important for us to do that man to man so that we're not projecting all these things on the women that they can't possibly feel for us. You know, I saw a little thing on PBS in which they said that the woman's corpus callosum in the center of the brain is larger than the man's.
I always knew it.
And so they fire both lobes real well. You know, I mean, they can get that lobal interaction, and ours is smaller. And in fact, I think it's the right side of the man's brain actually has a little ridge on it that women don't have. You know, because we've been physical and we've been out there doing things. You know, it's a mode of feeling. It's a way of feeling things. I think that women sometimes think that because we're not as verbal, I don't think that they think that we hear. You know, they tell us this stuff, and we go yeah, and then they think, well, where's the response?
Right.
You know,
That's
and it's like, and the response is in here, and we've absorbed it, but we're just not as prone to come back and say, "Gosh, you know, I understand that, and gee, what can we do?" And let's list it out and work through it.
I've heard people talking about that connection between the both sides of the brain. In women, it's like a 4-lane freeway.
Right.
And for guys, it's an old bumpy country road. You know,
Right.
it's like we got a road there, but it's not in very good shape.
Right. We got a 6-pack in the back, and we're driving 15 miles an hour down it. Just sure.
You know, I'd like to kind of challenge something that you have said, because I think that I and many women that I know, and I hear this a lot from clients, women clients, about their mothers. You know, we act as though we're really in touch with our feelings, and we may be more verbal and able to actually speak what we think our feelings are more quickly than men are. But I really am beginning to question whether we really know what's going on. I think that we use verbiage as a way to do something with men, and I'm not even quite sure what that is. Maybe it's an attempt to feel more powerful. I'm actually sharing something with you that is just coming to my head right now for the first time. But I think that we are not that totally together with our feelings. We can just talk about stuff and have all this stuff come out that becomes like a barricade or an attack, because we want something, I think, from our men. We want to have this dialogue. We want to have a response. And so I think we're throwing out stuff.
You know, I agree with you. I think that, you know, some of the workshops I've been to, a lot of men, you know, as Dave described, you know, the men who have been kind of emotionally responsible too much when they're kids and have grown up and are afraid of relationships, a lot of us are up here all the time. And from here down, we're numb a whole bunch. And one of our conditionings is to not feel pain. I think that, you know, women are real aware that feminism is political, thing. And I think that the way men relate, we relate differently politically a lot of times. I don't know, it's like I go to men's groups, and, I've been doing that for a few years, and it's like, all of us guys get together and we talk, right? We drum or whatever, and then we talk. And a lot of times we're up here, and about one out of every 5 or 6 meetings, man, somebody's got it down here in the heartline, And when it's down here, it's real, man. You can feel that thing, and you're talking about some stuff, and it's good stuff. And then, so I don't know. I think you try. I think men and women right now are just flying blind.
That's right. I agree.
So let me take a quick break here. We have. We'd like to go to a short tape from the Point of Light people, and stay with us. We'll be right back.
There is a mighty spirit shining out.
In Salisbury, Maryland, the hungry are being fed. In Wind Falls, Indiana, a man who learned to read at 47 is making sure others learn earlier. In Hope, New Mexico, people turned an abandoned school into a thriving community center. In Boston, Massachusetts, neighbors set up a crime hotline that's making their streets safer. From Seattle to Galveston, from Buffalo to Fargo, every day, someone in America is doing something to light up another life. But there is so much more to do. The light to do it is within us all. We only need to share it. Contact the Points of Light Foundation. Do something good. Feel something real.
Welcome back to Speaking of Men. I'm your host, Mike Rivas. Our guests today are David Kuenzli and Linda Smarella. And we're talking about men and anger, and women and anger, and communications. One of my comments, we were thinking about putting a teaser together, and I was saying, the whole world the whole universe is out of control, and we're all going to die. And that's absolutely true. You can only control so much. And for men and women who are afraid of the opposite sex and have been damaged, and I know women especially, sexual abuse and emotional abuse growing up, there's been a lot of bad stuff happen to women. I mean, I believe that. I mean, I feel it. Women tell me things sometimes just bring tears to my eyes. I mean, no joke. And but you can't be in a relationship without a certain amount of risk and without getting out there and being a little bit vulnerable. You guys got any comments on risk and vulnerability?
I think that for men, we've been trained to be out of touch with our vulnerabilities, to be strong and tough, and to shut down on our pain. And so we get in relationships, and what is it women want? They want us to open up and share our feelings. And it feels to us like an incredibly dangerous thing to do. And so I think oftentimes the more women want that, the more angry we get, because what we're really talking about is feeling out of control, feeling like we're going to be totally devastated, lost, swallowed up, engulfed, taken over. And those are the kinds of feelings that I hear men talking about when they think about really making commitments and getting close in relationships with women.
Well, now this sounds like, is this engulfed, swallowed up, lost in the void, swallowed again by the womb, returned into darkness. So what are we saying here? That men seem to not, we don't have a stability in there someplace that allows us to be in situations that are out of our control comfortably?
Right. I think that's exactly it. We're used to getting in a relationship and letting the woman do the feelings in the relationship. And so we sort of give up. It's like we turn to her and say, well, what am I feeling? You tell me what I'm feeling. And I think the work that we need to do is to really get clearly in touch with what's going on inside of us, to reclaim our own sense of clarity about who we are. And once we can do that, then we have a fair chance of being in a relationship in a healthy kind of way.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things you and I were talking about yesterday in trying to put the program together is that our culture, we have the Madonna and the Holy Mother, but you know, a lot of cultures have the Teeth Mother, who is the destroyer.
Mm-hmm.
And so men, suddenly when they walk up against that same destroyer energy that we have, and we walk up against it in a woman, it's like such a new thing, you know, for women to be allowed to be absolutely foaming at the mouth, in rage, burn up, you know. I know we were both at the same Bly workshop. Bly said the only thing you can do at that point is just get. You know, go away and let her do what she has to do, and then come back and see how it works out.
Yeah, and yet women, I think, are expected, now this is just a hunch, but I think women are expected to stay around when their man is angry and listen to it and take it. And,
Right.
And, you know, it's like we've been given the permission to cry, which I think brings up a lot of feelings of inadequacy in men, because they often feel that they have to handle it, they have to take care of it, they're supposed to do something.
We're down to about 3 minutes, down to a couple of minutes. Let me just ask you guys real quick here. We got about 2 left. There's a difference between sharing and dumping, isn't there? You know, and is that what you're talking about? A lot of times men just come in and say, God, you know, and they're just putting all this stuff over. So all they're doing is taking their overload and giving it to the wife, and then she's supposed to carry it, but there's no resolution on it. And women seem to be focused. I'll tell you what. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the programs and workshops you're doing? Take about a minute to do that, and then we'll be down to about a minute to outro.
Okay, I just have to say I think we both dump on each other.
Right,
So,
and there is a difference
there
between
is a
sharing and
difference.
dumping,
Yeah,
isn't
and we
there?
need to learn how to share and listen. Well, the most exciting thing that's happening right now in my life is building a ropes course on our land in the Manzanos. We have an education retreat center called Soaring Eagle Institute and Center, and we're going to be doing a lot of contract work with corporations, and we have this ropes course that's going to be there and available, and with the groups that we lead and things too. So
That's pretty neat. And you're doing and the two of you have ongoing workshops for men and women.
Right. We have a relationship workshop called Creating Healthy Relationships.
Right.
Which is really helping men and women do the kind of things that will minimize the kind of anger that we've been talking about today.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I'm listening to you. I'm waiting for the 30-second segment.
I was also going to say that I do a lot of organizing of men's support groups, and
Right.
it seems to me that much of what needs to happen for men is we need to get together and talk from the heart with other men in a way that feels safe, so we can really understand our feelings.
You bet. Listen, this has been Speaking of Men. I'm your host, Mike Rivas. This is the first part of a two-part, and I hope you'll tune in with us in 2 weeks to see the second part. I'd like to remind you guys and girls out there to be sure and stand if you can, run if you have to, but don't quit.